Today, will Israel Adesanya be able to overcome the verbal machine gun mouth that is Sean Strickland and Tai Tuivasa? Because there's not much going on this card outside of the main event. Find out today on Matter of Fact MMA. Let's go. So, I'm trying with this card, you know what I'm saying? But this is a top heavy card. This card is top heavy like the majority of the female celebrities in the 90s, if you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Baywatch. Let's get into it. In the main event, this Saturday, it goes down in Sydney, Australia, as Israel Adesanya steps into the octagon to defend his middleweight championship against Sean Strickland. So, with this fight, let's try to get into it, but there's not a lot to get into because this is what it boils down to. This was supposed to be Dricus du Plessis stepping in there with Israel Adesanya. Dricus had a foot injury, I believe that was the injury, but he had an injury that would not allow him to compete, as well as he was going to take this fight on short notice. Which is fine. This is what happens all the time in MMA. But apparently, Israel Adesanya and his coach Eugene Behrman believe that whatever your injury is, you should just go on in there and fight. And frankly, it's like, bro, stop. All right, stop. If your champion is so good, being Israel Adesanya, he should be able to beat the man at 100%. So don't worry about the man not stepping in there and try to shade him and talk bad about him because he didn't go in there. You can talk bad about him because of your beef that you have with him, but you can't talk bad about the man because he didn't take the fight on short notice. It was going to be like 6 weeks short notice, and he had a foot injury. So to his coach and Izzy, I say, hush. Let's move on from that. So, in the main event, you're going to have Sean Strickland, who stepped in there to face Israel Adesanya. Here's the deal. Israel Adesanya is one of the greatest middleweights, one of the greatest middleweight champions of all time. I personally feel like Anderson gets the nod over him. I know that Izzy beat Anderson, but that wasn't prime Anderson is all I'm saying. So, you know what I'm saying? To some people, he might be the GOAT. He's not the GOAT to me. However, you cannot take away his accomplishments. Like, literally, you can't. So, at the end of the day, if someone wanted to make an argument for who is the greatest middleweight contender or champion or fighter, period, it would have to be between Izzy and Anderson Silva. And that's just it. There's other people that have been good, but it's Izzy and it's Anderson. With that being said, I don't see a lot of paths to victory for Sean Strickland in this fight. I just really don't. With that being said, I said the same thing about Dricus du Plessis stepping in there against Robert Whittaker. So there's definitely a world where Sean Strickland can beat the man, but I just don't see the clear-cut path to victory in this fight. So in this, of course, if you're a betting man, you're a betting woman, if you got a brain, if you got any sense, you probably have to choose Israel Adesanya to win this fight. But I'm not going to just abolish the fact that Sean Strickland could go out here and somehow pull off a win. It's highly unlikely, but a lot of us were saying the same thing about Dricus versus Robert Whittaker, and look how that turned out. Shout out to Dricus du Plessis. So, main event, Israel Adesanya. I believe he's going to stop Sean Strickland. I believe he'll probably stop him anywhere from the 3rd to 4th round, probably due to TKO stoppage. But personally, because I'm not a fan of Izzy's shenanigans outside of the octagon, I'm not rooting for Sean Strickland to win, but it would be the funniest Saturday night of my life if Sean Strickland did go out there and beat Izzy. I would laugh about that for days, for weeks, for months, possibly for years. That would be great. And I am not a Sean Strickland fan, but just to see Izzy get his comeuppance in Sydney, Australia, that would be great. But nevertheless, I got Izzy to win. Let's move on. The co-main event, as I check my Nizzotes on my Fizzone. Tai Tuivasa stepping in there against Alexander Volkov. So, all logic says that you should pick Alexander Volkov to win this heavyweight bout. That's what all logic states. You know, he's long, of course. He's rangy. He's tall. He has a good jab. When he wants to put the pepper on those shots and really, really make his opponent feel it, feel that pain, you know what I'm saying? Put them hands on him. He can, he's got that stiff kind of power. Like, meaning when he hits a guy full force, you see him stiffen up, like the guy straighten up real quick, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that little, like if you was in elementary school or you was back in school and your homie comes up from behind you and pop, hits you, flush on the back of your back, kind of slaps your back like, wake up, bro. You know what I'm saying? It jolts you. That's the type of power that Volkov has. With that being said, bro, we're in Sydney, Australia, somewhat the backyard of Tai Tuivasa. I'm going to play the chaos card. Everything is telling me that Volkov should win this fight. I know I should pick Volkov, but I'm going to play the chaos card, being that I believe somehow Tai Tuivasa is going to pull this one off. I believe that they might get in some sort of it's hard to say how he's going to pull it off other than by knockout or TKO stoppage. So that he's not going to win by the scorecards. But, maybe he can kind of entice Volkov into a brawl, so to speak. Mano and mano type situation. Cojones versus cojones, you know what I'm talking about? Throwing these, back to back and forth. If he's able to get Volkov in a situation like that, I believe Tai Tuivasa takes this fight. I'm actually going to play the chaos card, and I'm going to choose Tai Tuivasa because something about this whole scenario speaks to me that he's going to pull off the upset win. I know that Volkov should win, and everything shows me he should win, but I see in my mind the vision of old Mystic Matt over here that Tai Tuivasa is going to pull off the win. Oh boy, now we're getting into the thick of it as far as this card. Manel Kape versus Felipe Dos Santos. I got Manel Kape. I just wanted to bring this up because of Manel Kape. I don't know a ton about Dos Santos, but Manel Kape is always appointment viewing at 125 pounds. So it should be interesting to see that fight, just to watch him work his techniques. You know what I'm talking about? If you're a fan of Manel Kape, then you know what I mean. Justin Tafa versus Austin Lane. Hard one to call. This is a rematch because Tafa got an eye poke in their bout they were supposed to have. I believe it was in when they were fighting in Jacksonville. When the UFC was in Jacksonville. He got eye poked by Austin Lane and couldn't continue. The Tafa brothers, I believe, been looking kind of good here lately. Pause. I would probably lean toward Tafa, but just maybe Austin Lane might have something. Definitely has the power. He has the length. He seems to be pretty comparable from what I've seen from him on the Contender Series, and it looked like he was getting the better of the exchanges when these two were matched up in Jacksonville. However, by him being from Jacksonville or, a former Jacksonville Jaguar, he could have been piecing him up more so based out of the fact that he was in his home, that he was in Jacksonville. So I don't know how much of that plays into it. I'm sure his family, friends, everybody was there watching him. Could have gave him a little extra oomph to go out there and try to finish Tafa. I don't really know, but it looked like he was getting the better of the exchanges before the fight ended due to eye poke. I'm not really sure who's going to take this one. I would probably lean toward Tafa, but we'll have to see. But that's going to be my pick in this. Tyson Pedro versus the Pleasure Man, Anton Turkic. I'm not going to pick somebody whose nickname is the Pleasure Man. You know what I'm talking about? So we going to go along with Tyson Pedro in this one. I believe this is kind of set up for him to get a big knockout win there in Sydney. So we'll see how that goes down. I'm gonna go ahead and pick Tyson Pedro. This homie picked the nickname of the Pleasure Man. It's just man, you can't make this stuff up. How about Carlos Alberg stepping in here? Another person from the Behrman camp, from City Boxing, City Kickboxing crew. Well, it's going to be a fight, but Carlos Alberg is probably going to sleep in, more than likely, in the first round. Jack Jenkins making a return. I'm all about Jack Jenkins. That definitely should be a good fight. But, I believe it's going to be the technical skill of Jack Jenkins in there against, I believe his name is, let's just say his last name, Mr. Mariscal. And I'm going to have to go along with Jack Jenkins in this one. I believe technically he's the better fighter. Although, Mariscal, he can make it a dog fight. And if he makes it a dog fight, that's plays a little bit more into his skill set. He's pretty sharp striking. He's pretty good in scrambles. Fairly good on the grappling side of things. Pretty comparable on the wrestling side of things, but I'd still have to go along with Jack Jenkins on this one. Jamie Malarkey versus John McDessie. I got to go along with Jamie Malarkey. John McDessie, a veteran of the sport, but the length of Malarkey has devastating striking. He can keep John McDessie at range, not let him get close. I got to go along with Malarkey on this one. Nasrat making his return. I don't really know about him. You know what I mean? He, earlier in his career, he was looking like he was going to be a good prospect, somebody that was really going to do something at lightweight, and he might even had a fight possibly, or may have had a couple of fights at welterweight at one point. He's under Firas Zahabi, but I don't know. He just hasn't panned out like how we thought. But, I believe he is on the 2-fight winning streak. So he is bouncing back. So we'll see how that goes. I would probably pick him in that fight. I don't really know. I don't really know how all that's going to go. But we'll see. But for the most part, that's about the end of this card. There's not a lot of other good things. You get to see Blood Diamond step back into the octagon. He's probably going to get slept. Blatantly only got a job because he's cool with Israel Adesanya. But nevertheless, you'll see him back in there. Shane Young stepping in there against Gabriel Miranda. I'm going to go Miranda in that fight over Shane Young. Not super impressed by Shane Young. I know he's under the City Kickboxing crew, but I'm just not really too impressed with him. But we'll see how that goes. Nevertheless, that's kind of like the show. It's not the best pay-per-view, not the best card. You would think they would be able to offer more to Sydney, but what do you want? You know what I'm saying? Robert Whittaker went out there and got laid out by Dricus du Plessis. That was the fight we were supposed to see against Izzy, but that didn't happen. So they kind of had to work quickly on their feet to try to pull something together and pull something off. So this is what you're going to get. This is going to be your Saturday night. I hope you're ready, because that's just what it is. So not a whole, not a lot of other things we can really say about the card. Of course, what everybody's waiting for this entire fight week, more so than the fights themselves, is the press conference where we get to see Izzy and Sean Strickland square up. And if you think like me, then you're just hoping that Sean Strickland makes a complete and total mockery of Israel Adesanya in front of everyone to expose the hypocrisy that is your middleweight champion. Nevertheless, we'll see how that goes down. I appreciate you guys for joining me for another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I'll check you next time. Peace.